The moment she stepped inside, whispers began. No one knew the truth about the woman they were mocking. The luxury boutique was bustling with elite shoppers, their designer bags swinging as they browsed through racks of high-end fashion. Among them, a woman entered quietly, her presence going unnoticed at first. She wore an oversized coat, slightly worn-out shoes, and carried a simple tote bag. But as she moved through the store, her gaze sharp and deliberate, it didn't take long for people to start whispering. Two saleswomen near the counter exchanged glances, their smirks barely concealed. "She's definitely in the wrong place," one of them muttered under her breath. The other chuckled. "Probably lost, or just looking around for fun." A group of well-dressed customers nearby took notice. One woman, draped in a luxurious fur coat, raised an eyebrow. "Should we call security?" she said mockingly. "Before she starts begging for discounts?" The poorly dressed woman, seemingly unaware of the comments, or perhaps choosing to ignore them, walked towards the display case filled with expensive jewelry. As she reached out to examine a diamond necklace, the store manager, a tall man in a crisp suit, hurried over, his expression tight with forced politeness. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, stepping between her and the case, "but we don't allow browsing too close to the displays unless you're a serious buyer." A short silence followed. Then she tilted her head slightly, studying him with an unreadable expression. "And what makes you think I'm not?" The manager hesitated, glancing at her attire before forcing a tight smile. "It's just store policy, ma'am." One of the saleswomen couldn't resist snickering. "She probably just wants to take pictures for inspiration." The woman exhaled softly, as if debating whether to say something. Then, without a word, she reached into her tote bag. A hush fell over the boutique as she pulled out a sleek black leather wallet, flipped it open, and placed a sleek metallic card on the counter. The salespeople's faces drained of color. The card, an elite, invitation-only membership, belonged to one of the wealthiest clients in the city. The woman finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I came to make a purchase, but seeing how I've been treated, I'll be taking my business elsewhere." The store manager's eyes widened in horror. "Wait, ma'am, please, that was a misunderstanding." But she was already turning towards the exit, her presence now commanding the room in a way no one had anticipated. As she reached the door, she paused, casting one final glance at the speechless staff. "Never judge someone by their clothes," she said simply, and with that she walked out, leaving behind stunned faces and the realization that they had just lost a client who could have bought the entire store. The store was gripped by an eerie silence as the poorly dressed woman walked out, leaving behind a sea of regretful expressions. The manager swallowed hard, his gaze darting between the saleswomen and the shocked customers. "Do you know who she was?" he muttered under his breath, panic creeping into his voice. One of the saleswomen, the one who had laughed the loudest, suddenly felt her stomach drop. She had an exclusive card," she stammered. "That means she's—" Before she could finish, the automatic glass doors swung open again. This time, a sharply dressed man in a tailored suit strode in. He glanced around, his jaw tightening when he spotted the store manager. "You just made a massive mistake," the man said coldly, his voice echoing through the now dead silent boutique. The manager straightened his posture, his mind racing. "Sir, she's the owner of this entire shopping complex," the man interrupted, pulling out his phone. "And she just called me." The realization hit like a thunderclap. The employees who had ridiculed her felt their knees weaken. One of the saleswomen let out a shaky breath, her face pale. "Oh my God." The man's sharp gaze moved over each of them, assessing their terror. "Do you know how many businesses she owns? How many companies she can blacklist you from?" He let that sink in before stepping forward, his voice dropping lower. She doesn't just buy luxury brands. She creates them. The manager wiped his forehead, his throat suddenly dry. Sir, we didn't know, he pleaded. It was a misunderstanding. The man smirked humorlessly. No, it wasn't. You judged her based on how she looked. One of the younger saleswomen, her hands trembling, whispered, Will she come back? The man scoffed. You really think she'd ever set foot in this place again? Outside, the woman sat in the back of a sleek black car, her expression unreadable as she stared out the window. The boutique had been one of her investment projects, a test to see if the employees truly upheld the luxury standard they claimed to represent. They had failed. Miserably. Her driver, an older man who had worked for her family for years, cleared his throat. Ma'am, should I take you to your next meeting? She turned away from the glass, her eyes flashing with something unreadable. No, she said, a small, knowing smile playing at her lips. Take me home. I have some calls to make. The engine purred as the car pulled away, leaving behind a boutique full of people who had just learned the most expensive lesson of their lives. A week later, the boutique was barely recognizable. The once busy store was now eerily empty, its sales staff reduced to half. The store manager had been fired, along with the saleswomen who had mocked the woman that day. Rumors spread like wildfire about who she was, what had happened, and the fate of the store. Then, one morning, a notice was pinned to the glass doors. Customers and remaining employees gathered around, reading the bold, unmistakable words, "Under new ownership." Whispers filled the air. The store had been bought, but by whom? Minutes later, a luxury black car pulled up to the curb. The door swung open, and the woman they had once ridiculed stepped out. This time she was dressed in a sleek designer suit, exuding quiet power. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she entered, her gaze sweeping across the stunned employees. One of the remaining saleswomen who had been kind to her that day stepped forward hesitantly. Ma'am, The woman held up a hand, silencing her. Then she turned to the newly appointed manager, a composed, middle-aged woman who had been personally selected for the role. Have the changes been implemented? Yes, ma'am, the manager replied. We've restructured hiring policies, introduced training on customer service ethics, and revised employee evaluations. Those who remain have proven their commitment to professionalism and respect. The woman nodded approvingly. Then, she turned to address the employees. This store represents more than just luxury, she said, her voice firm yet calm. It represents value, not just in the products, but in the way people are treated. Those who failed to see that are gone. Her gaze lingered on the remaining staff. You, however, understood it, and because of that, you still have jobs today. The employees exchanged glances, a mix of relief and gratitude washing over them. Then she turned toward the saleswoman who had treated her with kindness that day. You, she said. What's your name? The young woman swallowed. Elena, ma'am. The woman studied her, then nodded. Starting today, you are being promoted to Senior Sales Associate. Gasps filled the store. Elena's eyes widened. Me? You treated me with respect when you thought I was just a regular customer? The woman said. That kind of integrity is rare. You deserve it. Tears welled in Elena's eyes as she stammered a grateful, "Thank you." With one final glance around, the woman turned toward the doors. Before stepping out, she looked over her shoulder and said, "Let this be a lesson. Value is not just in wealth, but in character." And with that, she walked out, leaving behind a store forever changed, a team humbled, and a young woman whose life had just taken an unexpected, extraordinary turn. That evening, As Elena sat on the balcony of her small apartment, the reality of the day sank in. Just days ago, she had been worried about job security, barely making ends meet. Now, she held a promotion that could change everything. Her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. Elena. This is Victoria. Elena froze. Victoria? The woman who had once stood in front of her in a simple dress, dismissed by her co-workers, now revealed as the owner of the store. I hope I'm not disturbing you, Victoria continued. I just wanted to personally thank you for your kindness that day. Elena's heart pounded. Ma'am, Please. Call me Victoria, the voice on the other end said warmly. I've been thinking I need someone on my personal team, someone who understands people, who values kindness. How would you feel about coming to work for me? Elena gasped. Work for you. But I not as a sales associate, Victoria clarified. I mean a position with real growth. I see potential in you, and I'd like to mentor you. The position comes with a higher salary, benefits, and… She chuckled. Let's just say, no more worrying about rent. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. This had to be a dream. Just days ago, she had been nobody, struggling to prove her worth. Now, this woman, this powerful, inspiring woman, was offering her a future she never thought possible. I don't know what to say, Elena whispered. Say yes, Victoria said simply. Elena took a shaky breath, emotions swirling inside her. Then, with all the courage she had, she said, Yes. Victoria's smile was evident in her voice. Good. Be ready Monday morning. A car will pick you up. As the call ended, Elena sat in stunned silence. Her world had shifted in ways she couldn't have imagined. And to think, it had all started with a simple act of kindness.